America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Jordan Bruno, vice president of Job Creators Network.
You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. Today, we are joined by Carlos Ruiz. He actually was with us last year, and Carlos is joining us again. He oversees all the operations at HT Metals in Arizona. As a business leader, Carlos participates heavily in the direction of the local business community by participating on the local school board and as an active member in the Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Carlos, welcome back to Main Street Matters.
Hi, well, thank you for having me. It's been nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Busy time. So thank you so much for taking the time with us. Well, tell us, refresh our memory, refresh our audience about your business. What do you do at HT Metals? How did you start the business? How did you get into it?
Okay. I started the business about 21 years ago. HT Metals is now we've become a provider of custom cut raw material for manufacturing, precision manufacturing and fabrication businesses here in Arizona and a little bit in northern Sonora, Mexico. And I just started the business from scratch, just myself. Just decided one day I had an idea to distribute raw material. It's evolved as my customers wanted more value, and I think that's a small business. It allows me to carve out my little niche and to be able to compete against larger competitors that don't offer as much of the value-added services that we provide.
Interesting. So you saw a need and you filled that need.
Yep. Just like pretty much a lot of the entrepreneurial stories that are across this country. Somebody sees a need. They start to fulfill that need, they grow, and then evolve with their market.
Yeah, absolutely. How many employees do you have?
A total of 5, and that's pretty consistent. Sometimes we'll bump up to 6, but 5 full-time employees.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I love your story. I love having you on and having you talk about how you've grown your business. I know consistent. I always hear you talk about having 5 employees. They tend to be kind of your family, your extended family, right?
The 5 include myself, my wife, and then I have 3 other employees. And those gentlemen, 2 of them have been with me for 8 years. They started out pretty much like just a little bit out of high school, so they're young men. Another gentleman has been with me about 3 years. That started with us 3 years. So we pretty tight and long time employees for a small business.
That's great. Carlos, you recently had an op-ed in the Arizona Daily Star explaining how small business owners are supporting conservative policies. Can you just give our listeners a little bit of an overview of that op-ed?
Yeah. So the op-ed was not it was about small business owners. But not only that, but Hispanic business owners. In Arizona, we have, in Arizona in total, there's about 30% Hispanic population. A lot of them are entrepreneurial and small business owners. In southern Arizona, where I am, in Pima County, the county's approaching 50% Hispanic demographic. So you can just imagine half of the people here. There's a lot of Hispanic business owners like myself. Some of them have large businesses. A lot of them have very, very small businesses, micro businesses. And I wanted to talk to them about, hey, these policies, these conservative policies, they've helped me, and how they helped me, either by buying equipment, being able to grow my business, give better benefits to my employees, higher wages. So these types of policies that occurred under the Trump administration, primarily the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, they benefited me. I'm sure they benefited a lot of other people in our community. And those types of policies need to be extended. And we also need to, the contrast is you vote for Trump and you'll get these types of policies, or you can if you vote for Kamala Harris, you're not going to get these kind of policies. And so that there's kind of a clear distinction between the two candidates. And so this op-ed was pretty much highlighting those differences.
Yeah, well, I mean, it certainly is an interesting topic. I mean, the latest polling I've seen shows that Trump is within single digits of Harris among Hispanics, which would set a modern day record for the Republican presidential candidate in support from Hispanics. So do you think this message of yours in the op-ed is resonating?
I think so. I think it's also resonating amongst male Hispanics. A lot of them are in businesses like the trades, construction, restaurants. My business is in manufacturing. I'm a little bit of an outlier here in that there's only a few Hispanic business owners that are in the manufacturing realm, but there's just a lot of Hispanic business owners here. And I think this message is that the message also about the borders being is just out of control. We see that. I had an opinion piece also about, or I guess I was on a Fox News program talking about the border and how the border is just, we see it here and we feel it. And so getting control of the border is also a primary area of concern for the community here.
You mentioned two things. You mentioned the border. Give us an idea. There's sort of this idea that comes from the other side that Hispanics, don't mind this illegal immigration coming across the border. And, what we see in the headlines in states that are not border states is a lot of the crime. Tell us how, kind of the Hispanic community feels about that and what they would like to see in terms of that, because in terms of being in Arizona, you're a border state, you're feeling, crime, you're feeling the drugs come across the border. Mm-hmm. You're kind of, on the front lines of this thing. And I'm sure your communities are being impacted. Tell our listeners what Hispanics really think about immigration and what they'd like to see.
Well, here in Arizona, here in Tucson, the Tucson sector is quite large. It runs a little bit east of Yuma, which is on the Arizona-California border, and then it runs all the way to New Mexico. And so what we're seeing, there's big inflows that are coming into the port of entries through these programs that the Harris administration has concocted, and so they bring in thousands of these immigrants to processing centers in Tucson. They stay here for a few days and then they get blown out to parts all over the United States, either in buses. Our small airport is you can go to the airport if you travel. There's just the flights are full with the illegal immigrants going to different parts of the country. So there's that, but the big thing in a sector of Douglas, which is to the east of Tucson, still in that sector, that's where a lot of this trafficking of drugs is coming across, because the border is a little more it's a little more open. There's not as many Border Patrol agents there, and that county is where a lot of the drugs flow in. And so Tucson, being on about 60 miles north of that border, we're like the central distribution hub for fentanyl. So the fentanyl is coming across the border. It's coming up I-10, and then I-10 goes north up to Phoenix, and then it goes east out to Texas, and then west over to California. So we're like this distribution hub, and the fentanyl is so cheap here. We're starting to get we get drug addicts that are coming to Tucson, causing crime to support their habits, and then I just saw a presentation from one of the deputies in Cochise County where Douglas is. People are flying into Phoenix and Tucson, renting cars, and then driving out to this Cochise County to either pick up drugs, to transport them, or primarily also to transport illegal migrants, because they're getting like $2,500 a person to transport people. And these are the gotaways. These are not the people coming through the ports of entry. These are people that are coming across that don't want to be caught. And so we're kind of like this nexus of human trafficking, drug smuggling, drug transportation, and misery of American people that are falling under the addiction of fentanyl, and then starting to commit crimes against property owners and businesses to support those habits. So it's I think people in Tucson are just really fed up with the administration and how the whole border is being managed.
I can see why. Like I said, I mean, you're on the front lines of this thing, but as we see people being immigrants being, taken around the country and relocated, it is making every state in the country a border state, because they are suffering the same kinds of consequences, from a financial consequence to a humanitarian consequence and just a resource consequence in general. So, obviously that's probably the second issue that is pulled behind the economy is most important coming into this election, and for good reason. So thank you for sharing all that. The other issue that you mentioned is a gender issue in the Hispanic community. We've certainly seen a ton of information and polling on African-American men and the gender gap there. I wasn't as much aware of a gender gap with Hispanic men. Do you think it's a personality issue? Where do you kind of think the source is coming from?
Yeah, I think it is. It might be a personality issue. I mean, Donald Trump speaks very plainly. Some people don't like that. Other people like a plain spoken language about what's going on. I think Hispanic males maybe like that kind of just plain spoken, here's the problem, here's what I'm going to do to solve it. And so that strong leadership that he shows, I think resonates with Hispanic males. I have Hispanic friends, and they are supporting Donald Trump for that reason. We have a gentleman in that's one of my employees. I speak to my employees about policies and how they benefit the business. And so this gentleman, I think he's an independent. He may not have voted for Donald Trump prior, but now he's starting to move, and he's becoming quite supportive of Donald Trump, because he's seen. It's like A/B. They talk about it in I'm an engineer. In engineering, you have an A/B test. It's either this way or that way. And so they see this. People have experienced they've experienced Donald Trump and the prosperity that he provided. They've experienced the Harris-Biden administration, and they've experienced the misery and they don't see that anything's going to change. And so they say, okay, we're going to vote for Donald Trump, because I know what the two options are. And so I think that's another reason why people are starting to just see the two differences and move towards Trump.
Interesting. Carlos, can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, how are small businesses like yours faring under the Biden-Harris administration? And can you compare and contrast that to what you experienced under the Trump administration?
So under the Trump administration, we had low inflation. We had so because of low inflation, we had low interest rates. He brought about the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which allowed me to buy equipment to increase my productivity. That productivity led to greater sales, better benefits for my employees, raises, health insurance, 401k, all these kinds of things that I was now able to improve. And so people experienced this growth in income, in real income. And then all of a sudden we get the Joe Biden, Kamala Harris administration, and there's this wasteful spending, not the Inflation Reduction Act. There was some other stimulus that was add-on stimulus that was thrown in right at the very beginning, which created a rescue plan. So that was just money just sprayed out to communities, to individuals, and spend it. So then inflation goes up. And so here's what happened. I've seen about a 35% increase just in the raw material that I bought, that I have to buy, which is a huge component of what we do. So myself, my business, and I was just at a roundtable where other small businesses, we've seen our top line grow. So our sales grow because inflation happened. We start passing the costs of those products to people. So our top line grows, but the problem is all the cost of goods. Like I said, I had a 35 to 40% increase in the raw material that I buy. But then all of a sudden, I also have insurance costs that have gone up. I have wages that have gone up to retain employees, health insurance, electricity. All these things have increased. So our bottom lines, our net incomes as a percentage of our sales has not grown. And this is not just me. This is what I'm experiencing. But there were a number of other small businesses from like in the small restaurant businesses that have seen the same thing happen. They've seen their sales increase, but their net income is not keeping up. And so without the extension of this of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which had to do with like a 20%. I'm an S corporation, so all of my net income flows onto my personal. And Job Creators Network was able to, get a 20% deduction on your net income. So that way, that was our tax cut that we got, unlike the tax cut that some of the C corporations, the bigger companies got. So if they take that away, not only is my net income shrinking, but the taxes that I would have to pay on that net income would go up. So that's like an insult. Not only am I having to deal with the inflationary problems that the Harris administration brought about, but if they don't extend this tax policy, I'm going to get taxed more on the smaller net income that my business and many other businesses throughout my community, are struggling to achieve. So it's just like an insult. It's just insult. One thing after another. It's just, and so I think that's why I'm so passionate when I speak about this. I get, you probably could see the veins on my neck start to go just because this is what's happening. We had, Hispanics had rising wages. I think the figure is something like $8,000 on average. They saw their incomes increase under the Trump administration. And now with inflation, we're actually seen real wages decrease because yeah, you might have gotten a raise. Had to give raises because my guys earned it, but then also to keep them to kind of keep up with some of the nonsense. I mean, in Arizona, we also not only did we passed higher minimum wage laws, which has also put inflationary pressure on these floors. So I mean, it's just one thing after another that small businesses are having to deal with in Arizona.
Yeah, I think, Carlos, from what you're saying, really resonates with a lot of, or really encapsulates what a lot of small businesses are facing. And also there's a parallel to what ordinary folks are feeling. So like you said, top line, if you look at just average wage growth under the Biden administration, it's been about 17% versus Trump was 15%. So you think, oh, well, there's Biden 2% more. But when you factor in inflation, all of a sudden you have declining -3% wage growth under Biden, meaning real wages or for average folks have actually declined, hurting their standards of living. And since there was virtually no inflation under Trump, you have a massive real wage increase of thousands and thousands of dollars. So all of that is just a preamble to my question. Arizona is obviously a very, very important swing state in this election. It might determine the election. What are you hearing, not necessarily only from the small business community, but just from the community in general about how they're thinking going into this election?
I think it's going to be close. It's obviously going to be close. Just watching social media, watching news. I mean, there's a lot of spending going on. Both sides are spending a lot of money. There's a lot of commercials. There's a lot of PAC money. And we're seeing it. I'm seeing it. I've just recently started watching a little bit more local morning news because that's where those ads come out. Is in the local morning news, and so we're seeing. This morning I'm seeing ads, a lot of ads for PACs, but they're actually going down to the state level races. So it's not just obviously you have these big national races. We have a very tight congressional race going on in the area that I live, but they're getting down to the state senator. PAC money is being spent on television down at the state senator level. So it's going to be close. I think it's going to go a little. I think there's going to be there possibly is going to be some vote splitting. I believe Donald Trump is going to carry Arizona because of one, affordability and the inflation and the crime that's just, we just see it, and there is some violent crime going on, but there's just also this spreading of lawlessness that you see, the shoplifting and what have you. So I think Donald Trump will win Arizona, but it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight because people have really kind of fell into their tribes, I guess, if you want to call it, and their party tribes. But I think there's going to be enough. I think there's going to be enough Hispanic that are going to vote non-traditionally, and some independents that I think are going to be convinced to vote probably more Republican. That's the vibe. It's funny. Especially as we get tighter. I remember in 2016. I felt a similar type of vibe when Donald Trump was elected. That it all happened near the end, where people just said, "Okay, now we're starting to get focused," and there was just a little bit more conversation. There was just this feeling, people not being afraid to say, "Hey, this is how I'm going to vote."
Nationally, Hispanics now represent about 15% of the electorate. You write in your op-ed, a September New York Times Siena poll finds Kamala Harris has a 9-point lead over Donald Trump among Hispanics. Compare that to the 12-point advantage the same poll showed in July, shortly after she replaced Joe Biden as the nominee. Currently, Donald Trump, who enjoys a 41% support of Hispanics, is on track to surpass the Republican high watermark of 40% set by George W. Bush in 2004. How important, you mentioned that you talk to your employees. Do you find that your counterparts, other Hispanic small business owners, take the time to educate their employees?
Yeah, I advise friends that are business owners to speak to their employees. I know it's a difficult it's a difficult balancing act to speak to your employees. You never tell somebody how they should do things. That's not ethical. That's not the role that an owner should be. But I think telling people the impacts of why voting one way can decrease your fuel prices is very logical. You can say and just remind people, hey, back in 2019 or so, we were probably paying around $2 a gallon. Now we're paying $4 a gallon. Just reminding and that there is a connection. There's connections between policy and the effect. The housing prices, because we've brought so many people. I mean, rent prices in Tucson have gone through the roof, and it's because there's competition between people that have migrated here and people that are living here, and they're not building any more houses, any more apartment complexes. So just reminding people that there's connections between what politicians and bureaucrats do at the direction of those politicians and the impacts that you will feel in your daily lives. And that's all you have to do is just help people make those connections to the people that they vote for.
What's your advice to a small business owner, as far as sort of starting that conversation with their employees? Should they have a town hall? Should they have individual conversations? How does that look in your business? And how would you advise another small business owner on how to start that conversation so it doesn't sound like you better vote for so-and-so?
We're so small. The first thing I do when I get to work is I just kind of walk out on the shop and just say good morning to guys. And a lot of times they bring up the conversation to me. They say, hey, what did you see about, the last thing on the news last night? Or, so I like that kind of approach, rather than, I think, getting everyone together, and saying, hey, I'd like to do a presentation, is a little bit, to me, I think that's probably a little bit intimidating. I think these individual conversations, small group conversations, and then you can tell people, hey, once you find out that they've become a little bit more educated, it's like, well, share this information, especially if you have a larger organization. Tell people, hey, I'm just talking to you as a person who has a certain experience or mindset. This is my frame of reference, and go ahead and share that frame of reference with other people in the organization. And that's, I think those kind of individual connections are probably a little bit better way to disseminate how policy and what's happening in your life make that connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you know, JCN is founded by Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of the Home Depot. And that's exactly the types of conversations that he said that he would have with the Home Depot associates when he was the CEO. And it was really about walking in the stores, which is where he loved to be, and having conversations with them and always saying it wasn't about telling them how to vote or who to vote for, but making sure they understood that what happened in Washington impacted them and their lives, and helping make those connections as well. I mean, you use a lot of the same terms that that Bernie used, and that was the whole reason why he wanted Job Creators Network to work with small business owners like you, so that you could carry that message, because he truly believes that the employees are the it's your family of employees. When you're the business owner, you care about them, you know their families, you know their children, you know that so-and-so's son is playing first base on Saturday. And when you're that close to the people and you understand their lives, helping them understand that the success of your business is also the success that they will have in their family and their lives and their prosperity. So I think that's a great message. I think that's a great thing to share with people. And thank you so much for doing that, because a lot of people are nervous to even talk about anything that remotely sounds like politics, or they think it'll be construed as politics in their place of business, because they don't want to alienate their employees. But I think you have a great approach. I hope you continue sharing that with other small business owners in your community about how to talk to their employees about these very important issues, because if you do better, they do better.
And one thing I'll add one other thing. One thing that's very interesting that I've observed about we all have the same problems, and there's so many small businesses. When I talked about my top line growing, but my net income maybe not growing as much, that's happening in other industries, not manufacturing. Like I said, there was a gentleman there that has a few franchises of a small restaurant, and so when we experience something, it's multiplied. So if you can even just one or two small businesses start talking across, and I know Job Creators Network, you guys are very good nationally, and it is amazing how this kind of thing goes viral very, very quickly, because you are talking about very, very small, but many small businesses. It's not a huge, Fortune 100 business that has tens of thousands of employees. You're talking about small businesses that can really make an impact across the entire country by just doing small things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for everything that you're doing and taking the time to also spend time with us today and educate our listeners about how to talk to their employees and the policies that are impacting you and your community. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in to Main Street Matters. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network, and new episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts from. And we'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.